In case you missed it, here's a Sports Animal Rewind.
Joining us from the Louisville Courier Journal, covers Western Kentucky. You can find him on Twitter. It's at Michael Grant _CJ. Michael Grant joins us here on the new Sentinel Sports page. Hey, Michael, Vince Ferrara and Brendan Quinn here in Knoxville. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing fine. How are you guys?
We're doing great, Michael. Appreciate the time today. Just the experience of Bobby Petrino as head coach, how different has that been compared to Willie Taggart previously, who's now at USF?
Well, you're essentially bringing in, you're subbing out a guy in Willie Taggart who's a young up-and-coming coach, but was a rookie coach when he came to Western Kentucky for Bobby Petrino, who's as good a coach as there is in college football. His record, shows that, given his BCS success at Arkansas and at the University of Louisville. So you expected Western Kentucky to get a significant upgrade in terms of coaching and coaching staff. And, I wasn't terribly shocked by what I saw on Saturday against the University of Kentucky, but I was impressed with how quickly they seemed to pick up everything that Bobby likes to do.
And how much have they, I guess in terms of the vibe and kind of all the hype around Petrino, how have they kind of dealt with that through the preseason of not getting distracted just by the kind of attention drawn by their head coach for other reasons outside of off the field?
I think pretty well. I mean, nothing, it's springtime, so everything was just speculation. We hadn't seen actual evidence of any sort of success. We expected that they would have a chance to do well, but they haven't played a game yet, and now they have. So going forward, it's going to be interesting, especially if they do gain some success and some more national attention, how that's going to maybe affect the team. But everything is still pretty early. Things would obviously ramp up exponentially if they're able to, get what would be a major upset this Saturday.
Michael Grant from the Louisville Courier Journal joining us, previewing Western Kentucky, Tennessee, and Western Kentucky Saturday at Neyland Stadium. Michael, Brendan and I were talking about it earlier. Kentucky in that opener was able to rush for 216 net yards, including Raymond Sanders, who had a pretty good game. Why do you think Kentucky was able to run the football against Western, and how much of a concern is that against Tennessee Saturday?
I would assume a major concern, since from what I am led to believe that Tennessee has arguably the best offensive line in maybe college football. A part of it was the unknown as far as quarterback at Kentucky, and I think a couple of those runs, I want to say they had they did have two real big ones, a 49-yarder and a 50-yarder. And one of those from the running quarterback, Jalen Whitlow. So Tennessee's offense, I assume, is a little bit different. But, it's a big concern with Tennessee's offensive line and still a relatively new Western Kentucky defensive line.
Obviously, anytime you talk about a Petrino coach team, you talk about the passing game. Tennessee brings a very inexperienced, young, some true freshmen in the secondary. What can you tell us about the Western Kentucky passing attack that can actually maybe be effective against UT?
The quarterback, Brandon Dowdy from Western Kentucky, last Saturday was only his second career start. His first career start was 2 years ago, and he lasted only 3 plays because he suffered a season-ending injury. So Western Kentucky is very green at quarterback. In fact, you have Dowdy, who now has 2 starts in his career. The rest of the quarterbacks on the roster have 0 starts, so they are extremely green. Dowdy played well, but he's going to be on the road this time, and Western Kentucky's wide receivers are also very green. And their tight ends are very good. They have very good pass-catching tight ends, but the wide receivers are young. Their lone experienced wide receiver, Willie McNeil, had a terrible game last Saturday. He had 3 drops, including one which would have been a 71-yard touchdown catch.
Michael Grant joining us, covering Western Kentucky for the Louisville Courier Journal. How big of a prospect was Doughty that at Western Kentucky? Is he one of the higher rated guys coming out of high school that's on the Western Kentucky roster, or who are some of those guys, if not him?
No, Doughty, not in particular. He hadn't started a game since 2011. In fact, last year he was third string. So he's a guy who's had to kind of work his way up. I don't remember exactly what star recruit he was, but it wasn't like he was a big-time prospect.
Okay.
Overall, Andrew Jackson, the linebacker, he probably is the most NFL-ready prospect. I think he'll have an excellent chance to make an NFL roster and be drafted fairly high. Jonathan Dowling probably is their top overall recruit. I mean, he started out at Florida and then transferred and ended up at Western Kentucky. I believe he was rated one of the 5 best defensive backs in the country.
Jonathan Dowling, number 1 safety for Western Kentucky. Do you have an example, Michael, of what the players have said in terms of the impact of Bobby Petrino with his expertise? Any examples of the players have maybe told you, if you've heard about just how much of an impact and how knowledgeable and great play caller Bobby Petrino is?
I think they all, I can't think of anything specific off the top of my head, but pretty much they all talk about his attention to detail, the fact that they know his previous track record as well. It presses upon them. I mean, one funny story is that Mitchell Henry, the tight end, when he first heard Petrino was going to be the head coach, he got a text message from a teammate, and he thought he was being punked. I mean, he didn't believe it. So, but basically, a lot of them just talk about how how smart he is in terms of all his preparation, in terms of detail, and I think that's been primarily it.
And I've heard people rave about his ability to just kind of take what he has and make it work. Find if say a guy has two good strong skill sets, that he's able to kind of take those and get the max out of the limited abilities of a bunch of guys in different places. Is that something that you're, obviously it's so early, but is that something you're starting to see kind of just in these first few weeks?
Well, it's important to remember that Willie Taggart, who's now at South Florida, left him a really good roster. He recruited well, so Bobby Petrino, it wasn't like he was taking over a depleted team. He was taking over a team with a lot of good players. So because of that, he's able to, while it's not necessarily what he would like, I think in terms of receiver, they do have a very good offensive line. They do have excellent linebackers. They've got a good secondary. They've got terrific running backs. So he has a lot of pieces where he could run, I think, a good portion of his offense. It's just a question of upgrading the wide receiver talent or allowing that to mature, because they don't really have much in terms of vertical threats. Everything, in fact, in the Kentucky game, outside of that one bomb that was dropped by Willie McNeil, everything was pretty much more of a short passing game, not too many real deep throws.
Does Doughty have the ability to do that, and we just didn't see it in that first game?
I think he wanted to make him feel comfortable, so there were a lot of safe plays. Going to Petrino, they had been preparing for their opening series all spring and all during camp, so they had scripted a lot of I don't remember the exact number. I want to say like the first 10 or maybe 15 plays. So he had an exact idea of what they were going to do, and I think this is a process of just making the quarterback feel comfortable with good, safe throws that he knew he could complete, and also to gain him some confidence. Because remember, this is a quarterback who had only one career start, so he wants to make his quarterback feel as comfortable. He actually, in my opinion, threw let's see, he threw 34 passes against Kentucky. That was a little bit more than I had initially expected.
Michael, having seen them now in an actual game, Western Kentucky, what would be the areas of concern you would have for Western Kentucky against Tennessee in this game?
Well, like I said before, their defensive line against Tennessee's offensive line is a big concern. Also, that game against Kentucky, it was 35-26, but Western Kentucky really dominated that game, if not for a bunch of miscues. Antonio Andrews, their best offensive player, had a couple of fumbles that Kentucky turned into 10 points. Willie McNeil had 3 drops. If they need to cut down on those mistakes, I mean, they got away with those against Kentucky, but against Tennessee, who I didn't see their game last week, but I assume the talent level at Tennessee is considerably better, so they can't afford to make those mistakes against Tennessee.
How aggressive are they on defense? It looks like a base 4-3, but are they blitzing a lot? Do they play safe to not try to get beat over the top? What's sort of the approach defensively?
I think generally speaking, their philosophy is a bit of a mix. My recollection is, and I haven't actually watched the game since I was there live, so this is just my initial impressions from the game, but I don't think they were overly aggressive in a lot of areas, especially when they saw the running quarterback come in. I think they pretty much tried to adjust to that, and then when Maxwell Smith came, obviously he's more of a pocket passer, so they weren't too overly aggressive, but I think they tried to play smart, and a couple of times they got out of position or were fooled on a couple of those long runs. But overall, I mean, there's still a lot of room for improvement for them.
Michael, last thing with you. You tweeted yesterday about a story that was out with a former trainer that had accused Bobby Petrino of not falling in line with or not being pleased with the way he handled things at a previous stop. What'd you make of that story coming out? How legitimate is it? And what, if anything, has Western Kentucky said to this point?
Western Kentucky hasn't said anything. Both Petrino and the athletic director, Todd Stewart, were not, I was told through a third party that they were not going to comment. But right now it's a he said sort of situation. The man who made the accusations is Danny Cobble, who was a former trainer there. Obviously, he had been there since 2009. Petrino was hired in December, so they hadn't spent a lot of time together, but obviously things got to a point fairly quickly if you're going to get rid of a guy over the spring like that. I don't know. I haven't interviewed Mr. Cobble. I don't since I don't know him and I haven't talked to Petrino about this, it's still, you don't have a sense of what to necessarily believe. These are just accusations, but they are disturbing, but I don't think anyone who's followed college football or any sort of football at any level is overly surprised that a coach whose livelihood depends on his players being on the field as much as possible would either try to influence or just flat out order that a injured player be back on the field. However, this isn't like during the football season. This was over the spring, so I assume these were mostly rehab injuries or maybe an injury from spring practice. So that's another question that needs to be answered. This wasn't like this happened or occurred during the rigors of a regular football season.